welcome to the Filmcast review of The Promised Land, newest film by director Nikolaj Arcel. In 18th century Denmark, impoverished war hero Captain Ludwig Kalen sets out to tame a vast uninhabitable land on which seemingly nothing can grow, end quote. Now, I had started hearing like random bits from different critics and filmmakers saying this movie is incredible, and then it just hit video on demand, so we thought, let's give it a shot. And let's just talk about what our overall thoughts are. Devindra Hardar, what did you think of The Promised Land?
Yeah, I freaking love this movie. It made me realize that when Mads Mikkelsen cries, I cry. And it's just, that's what happened.
Happen a lot.
It happened in another round as well. I was like, man, he has one of the most iconic faces in cinema, right? And most of the time it is like stone-faced and grim staring at somebody, but there's so much going on there. And this movie is a lot of stone-faced Mads Mikkelsen too, but it also like it changes, and he is changing as a character too throughout this thing. I love a great big sweeping historical epic. I love a story about essentially a commoner versus annoying rich rich people. So, and showing off like how kind of useless basically governments are in these situations too. This is a Western set in the Danish wilderness. It's about a soldier who starts at a literal poorhouse. We meet him at the poorhouse for retired soldiers, and he just wants to have a farm. And I think it's a fascinating exploration of a man driven to have this mission, a man driven to be noble. He aspires to nobility in his actions and the things he's trying to do. And there is something noble about what he's trying to do too, but also this is a movie about him learning like what true nobility actually is. And I think that is fascinating too. Mads Mikkelsen is great. I love everything about this movie, like his mission, the fact that he is kind of an asshole early on, but even his dark heart starts to warm up. I love the variety of characters we have going on here. It is everything I love about Westerns, where you're basically building something in the wild, and you've got bandits out there. You've got the sheer elements to fight against. You've got the bureaucracy of a government that is nowhere near where you are, but can basically lay down the law and basically direct how you have to live your life. I think all these things are fascinating, and Mads Mikkelsen is incredible in this film. So yeah, if you miss a good old sweeping Western, this is essentially one of those.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said, and this idea of that, like other countries have the equivalent of westerns too. I thought was fascinating to kind of explore.
Well, it's either
in
us
this
or
movie.
Australia. Australia, we get a lot of it too. Like the entire
Yeah.
Mad Max
Right.
thing is Australian wilderness. Yeah.
But just this idea, I think that there's this, in America, there's this mythology of this vast untamed land that has yet to be explored, has yet to be settled, has yet to be taken advantage of. And it was just interesting to see that notion in another country's history. Jeff Kanata, what were your thoughts on The Promised Land?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts on The Promised Land are best summed up in the form of a limerick.
Interesting.
It's a truly outdated canard that foreign films are avant-garde. This movie's successful and the story is accessible. It's the land and the man that are hard.
Ooh.
Like that. Like that. Deep.
Yeah.
Deep.
It's a hard man in a hard land. There's no harder man than Mads Mikkelsen. As you said, stone-faced, grizzled. I think he smiles once in this movie, and when he does, it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa, he smiled. I really dug this movie too. It's awesome. I am so taken, and I don't know why, because in real life, this would be the furthest thing that I would want to experience. Like I have no desire at all to be a farmer, to farm. My nightmare is to actually have to farm in any way, in any capacity. And yet I find it so compelling to watch someone work the land, and it's not something you see dramatized very frequently because it's kind of a difficult thing to dramatize. The notion of repetitive daily work, But this movie does a great job in showing just how rough and rugged this heath is, this untamed stretch of unfarmable land, or purportedly unfarmable. And I'm so taken by how this movie conveys the reality of what that must be like, living by yourself, making everything that you have. You have to make it. You have to conjure it out of nothing. You have to figure out a way to survive in a place that doesn't want you to. It's inhospitable to your basic needs. And all of that stuff of just being out there and making a life, and what is required, and the knowledge base that one accumulates over their life that allows them to engage in this endeavor. Like he comes to this knowing what needs to happen, how many men he'll need, how many people to work the land with him, what resources it will require, how long it's going to take. All of that just process stuff, I just ate it up. I loved it. And then on top of it, you have this really kind of delicious rivalry with a villain that is great. I mean, it's a great movie villain, right? A truly despicable movie villain that's brought to life brilliantly by an actor whose name I'm not going to probably be able to pronounce. But just a fantastic experience, start to finish. This hardened world, it really just brings you into the time period in a way that the best movies like this do. I'm thinking of Unforgiven, the old Clint Eastwood movie from the early 90s. Movies that just make you feel lived in, like you understand that the brutality of that life, the harshness of it. The filmmaking does a great job in conveying that, and then layering on top what is a very satisfying tale, underdog tale, and wrapped in virtue and honor and morality. I had a blast with this movie. I'm glad we watched it because it was not on my radar at all. So I enjoyed Promised Land quite a bit.
I also really like this film. I think it's pretty great. I think, it's a lot of plot for even a 2-hour long movie. And I think that certainly towards the last third of the movie, some of the plot developments get a little bit, I'll just say, outlandish, a little bit kind of. The first part of the movie, I felt like, oh, this feels like a really grounded, realistic depiction of what it would be like to actually do this. One of the first shots of the movie that immediately I was on board was they show him kind of digging up the land, and then it's not quite a match cut, but it kind of cuts to him doing the same thing in all 4 seasons. It's like him doing it in the fall, then cut to winter, then spring, then summer, then fall again, and it's like, what an incredible sequence of shots right there. I was like, visually amazing storytelling going on.
Yeah.
I mentioned Nikolaj Arcel directed this. He also directed The Dark Tower, which was not very good. But it was made over at Sony, and I feel pretty confident in saying that it was likely not because of him that the movie was bad.
Lots of reports of studio interference.
Right, exactly. And so I can imagine he had like a terrible experience making this movie in America, and he went back home and
to show those Americans how to make a Western, damn it. Yeah.
Well, my sense is that they give people these, 10-15 million dollars to make a movie, and then that's it. Like, and then you come back with movie, like, so you don't get very much money, but you get like more creative control, and I think that's very evident in this. This feels like really carefully constructed all the way through, very very meticulously made all the way through, and yeah, I think there's just so many good things about it. Like, you get so attached to these characters. This is one of those movies where it starts getting to the 1 hour 45-minute mark, and I start getting sad that there's not going to be more movie, because I'm like, oh, I feel like there's so much more story left to tell with all these characters. So overall, I had a great time. It's gorgeous. The movie is so beautiful looking. Mads Mikkelsen is a standout. Also, big shout out to the woman who plays his one of his workers in
And
his
Barbara?
house,
Housekeeper,
and Barbara, who is
Amanda Collin is her name.
Amanda Collin, who plays Mother in the HBO Max original series Raised by Wolves.
Right.
Yes, she
Completely
does.
unrecognizable in this movie compared to that. But
If you know that show and you know what she was in that, like,
it is
that's pretty rad.
it could not be more different, the kind of role that she plays in this
Yeah.
movie. And so she's obviously super talented as well. And yeah, Jeff, you brought up the villain in this movie, who's played by Simon Benneberg, I think, who plays Frederick de Schinkel, and who honestly, that character gives the movie a lot of its comic relief. Like the movie is very
Sure.
serious throughout, but that character is quite funny at times, and
I mean,
He's
also
comically
super
evil.
dark.
also super
Yeah,
dark.
yeah.
But there is this, he has this thing where he like tries to add the word "duh" to his name, so he's like Frederick
Very
de
funny.
Schinkel,
Mhm.
and that is it's a very funny ongoing bit that no one
Yeah.
respects him in
Yeah.
doing that. So anyway, there's a lot of like it's just overall like a really enjoyable epic film with a sweeping scope
It is.
that I would recommend.
Also very I think like it in the second half it tends toward being a romantic film too. Like there's a lot of romanticism here too, which is something I always like in westerns. Like their love interests shift, but also
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
a
yeah.
relationship between him and like a young girl that he ends up adopting, and I thought that was very moving too. Like I think all his relationships with other people are fascinating and astounding, and I found a lot to love with the young girl too. Before we get to spoilers, like I just want to say, like that kid reminded me of my daughter. It's like to bring in a Romani character and to treat her with respect to, and to show like how those people are even back then were especially hated, among the Danish. I think that's tremendous stuff. This movie made me tear up at several times, specifically because of that little girl. So yeah.
I do agree with you a bit, Dave, that the end he turns a little bit into Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And we can talk about that more in
let's just get the
spoilers.
spoilers.
Yeah.
Let's get the spoilers.
Yeah.
We're gonna get to spoilers starting right now. I think the ending of this movie is wild. Like
Mm-hmm.
it gets really kind of soapy pretty quickly towards the end, where she kind of poisons the guy and then cuts his dick off. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's really like it's very satisfying because that guy is horrible and she's getting her revenge, and you love to see it. But at the same time, it
Mhm.
felt very like the rest of the movie felt like, oh, this
I
feels
mean,
very
we saw a
grounded.
man get
And-
boiled alive too, so
yeah,
that was pretty
rough.
bad.
That
Yeah.
was pretty rough. But I don't know, the idea that she could like infiltrate this palace and poison the guy, and then it felt a little
I
bit
don't know, I
far
bought
fetched
it.
to me.
I bought it
that's
because
fair.
also I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, what are you up to? Oh, you're trying to sneak. Oh, you're trying to do something here." Like I do feel like it would have been pretty easy for her to get back into it. So yeah.
The beat that I was like, oh, that's a little shorthand. It's a little hand
Mhm.
wavy. Was the very very end where it's just like, oh, and also he broke her out of prison and they went off together.
Right.
It's like
That's
wait,
it.
what? He
That's
did
it.
what?
That's
Well,
all you need.
he
Yeah.
killed the guy, right? Like driving the prison, because you see a shot of that guy
Yeah.
driving the prison carriage, and
Yeah.
he seems like he's dead. So he just like
Yeah.
goes and murders that guy and then frees
That's
her,
the
which
end
is
of
like
that chapter.
it's the
you
happy
know?
ending. I mean,
I think it's a good ending in terms of like the arc of his character, right? Of this
Yep.
guy who aspired to nobility at the cost of his human relationships, right? He would
Yes.
rather pretend to be a noble than be kind to other people. And at the end he figured out what he actually loved. So I think
Yeah.
in a like a poetic form, I think that works.
I agree.
I love the
I just
arc
felt it
of-
was
yeah,
a little
yeah,
easy. A little easy. We just see the shackles
Sure,
on the ground.
yeah.
And it's like,
It's
oh,
so beautiful though. So
Yeah,
beautiful.
that seems like
And
Yeah.
that, and
its
that
own movie
answers
right
all
there.
of my questions about how that
It's all I
played
need
out,
to
right?
know. I've seen what this command can do. Yeah.
Right.
But I agree with you, Devindra. I think the arc is really a beautiful one. Of here's a guy, he has all these ambitions.
Mhm.
We have seen this arc many times before,
Yes.
but
Yes.
it's executed so skillfully, right? It's a guy who has all these big dreams and then realizes like the people that he loves, they're kind of in the way of his big dreams, and so he like sacrifices them to some degree, but then realizes like, hey, that was not a sacrifice worth making, and that's kind
the
of
people are more important.
yeah, the people are
Yeah.
more important.
The scene where he
What if
abandons
the real
girl,
promised land
yeah.
was the family and friends we made along the way?
The promised land was
Amazing.
the family in that bed together. Like that
Yeah.
one sweet
Yeah.
scene where they're all hanging out together. And
Yeah,
like
they're
the scene
actually
where he has to
smiling.
abandon the girl just broke my heart. And then he
That's
goes back
so
and finds her and
brutal.
he's like, the biggest apology of all time. Like, I will never let you down again. You
Yeah.
know, like that all killed me. Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
that scene where he abandons her and she's calling Papa and he's just
Yeah.
won't look back. Ugh.
Ugh.
Yeah. And at the same time, I think to the film's credit, it lets you understand what a challenging position he's in, right? Like if he
Yeah.
doesn't do what these settlers say, his whole like everything in his life that he's been building up to is lost essentially.
Yeah.
And it's like an impossible position for him, and he chooses poorly in that case. But yeah, I mean, there are so many little touches about the movie I loved. Like, first of all, I think with one exception, it does a pretty good job of showing you what frontier living is like. So, like,
Yeah.
I think the house looks a little bit too nice. Like, just building that house in the middle of nowhere is like, wow,
I
that's
know,
a massive accomplishment.
I wish they
Right.
hadn't skipped over that. I would
Yeah,
love to
I
have
was
seen
like,
that house
yeah, how did you
erected.
do
Like,
that? That's amazing.
yeah, right.
But then, throughout the movie, Deshinkle continues to offer him outs. And there's this one scene where he gives him like this bucket of slop that's like left over, and then like they eat it because they're so hungry. And just I was like, I've never seen anything like that. Where like, yes, the leftovers from this guy's palace or whatever would of course be like really nourishing to but it like looks very unpleasant. And then later when the bag of gold is in it, it's such a badass like.
Well, he
reveal,
doesn't. I don't even think he's eating it by that point. He's sitting there looking at everybody eating it. He's like, this cannot stand. Like, I'm not going to stand for this. Like, he's a man of principles, and that's ultimately like part of the problem for him. But the result is we're gonna have to kill the last goat, the only goat we have. We have packs and packs of bags of potatoes. We're gonna kill this goat because they need the food, and also this little girl's gonna die if I don't do it.
And he doesn't want to sacrifice his potatoes, guys.
Doesn't want
This
to
movie
sacrifice
should have been
potatoes.
called "There Will Be Spud."
Well done.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
Well done.
Anyway, any other
You're just
thoughts?
sitting on that one the whole time. You're just sitting on that.
That should have been your opening.
That should have been your opening statement on the
I think
show.
it's like it's a quasi spoiler that like, but it's like funny the way potatoes are in this movie. It's like,
I didn't mention potatoes. Early on.
Like this is the this is the magic
potatoes
food.
are wild.
It can grow in any circumstance.
Well, the thing that's was so funny to me about that is everybody knew about it. I'm like, why don't we all just go get potatoes?
Well, potatoes were hard to get. Potato, like this is, I gotta look up the exact time frame, but potatoes were not widespread everywhere, right? They came from the Americas,
from Germany.
From Germany,
from Germany. And
I mean, initially,
do you think these potatoes grow on trees, Jeff? Come on,
potatoes came from the Americas. So even back then, potatoes as a thing were new to a lot of countries. So yeah.
I just felt like in the palace, they're like, he's not going to be able to grow anything. It's like, oh, he's got potatoes. And they're like, oh, fuck, potatoes.
Never thought of that.
It's like, well, why don't you go get some potatoes, dude? You got money?
It's like he has like a nuclear weapon. Or, we are screwed now.
Well, when Deshinkle hears about the potatoes, they're like, oh, hell.
Yeah.
That's... Can't beat this. But part of it too is like all the royal advisors also just don't give a shit. Like they don't actually care about doing the thing in the heath. They just want to appease the king, So like this is somebody who actually cares about doing this work. And that's the sort of that dichotomy we see early on too, where they're making fun of his outfit and they're just like lazy and eating. And he's just like, I have this plan. I'm going to do this. Is there a more noble actor out there now than Mads Mikkelsen? Because man, this guy will just like in a dumpy, flea-ridden costume, like will project the most nobility in that room.
I love how everyone's like, you're wearing a really shitty flea-ridden outfit. I'm like, he looks pretty freaking
pretty good
to me.
I was like, he looks pretty freaking sweet. I don't think I could pull that off.
The wig did look shitty.
That
wig looked bad, but the whole him standing there for the wig replacement thing, like I feel like he would not stand for that.
Real power move.
Very funny when he puts it on and that white wig just looks like ass on his head, and he's like, he walks up to the girl and he's like, hello. And she's like, oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Very funny. I also loved how he's got all this confidence in the king, and the king is a complete drunk, like doesn't know anything that's going on. The guys are like, we don't care about this dude. The king doesn't know anybody from anything.
Well, I just think when you read, when you're reading history books, it's like the king did this and the king did that. And then you watch a movie like this and it's like, oh, that guy is like hundreds of miles away. There's no like police or phones or anything.
Right.
Everyone's just on their own. Like there's no law. Like everyone just does what they, defends themselves. And it's like, this movie really kind of shows you how tenuous that power is.
The
right?
richest person is the law, basically. So
Well, and and what did they have to do? Like, if you are infinitely wealthy and powerful, what do you have to do in that world? There's nothing to do. There's no way to entertain yourself. You hunt, okay?
Yeah.
They go on a hunt, a farce of a hunt, or they get wasted every day. Like that's the two activities, I guess.
Well, the other activity is acquiring more land and
Yeah.
more power, you know? So
There was no Netflix back then. There was no Max the One to watch for HBO.
No,
you know?
they didn't have anything to watch for HBO. There was no one to watch.
Would have been a whole different world. I bet Dashinkle would not have given him such a hard time.
Yeah.
If he had,
that dude,
if he could watch Love is Blind season 4,
if he could have binged True Detective, that dude would have been a complete non-issue.
All right. Anyway, this is a movie we all really enjoyed. Well worth watching. An epic story, an epic love story. You should check it out. It is The Promised Land.
Good.
It's available right now in streaming or video on demand. And at the end of the day, it is really impressive that Nikolaj Arcel made The Dark Tower and then still kept making movies and made The Promised Land.
Well, got the hell out of the U.S.
Because this
to make
movie
better
freaking
movies.
rocks.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching this video of the Filmcast. Check out these other videos that we have available, and be sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get other videos from us in the future.
You can also go to thefilmcast.com to catch all of our audio podcast versions of all of our episodes.
And support this podcast at patreon.com/filmpodcast, where you can sign up for ad-free episodes and exclusive After Darks.
Thanks so much to everyone who makes the Filmcast possible.